makers and market movers. This is The Pulse with Francine Lacqua.
Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to The Pulse. I'm Francine Lacqua here in London with the conversations that matter. And here's what's coming up on today's program. China's central bank unexpectedly cuts a key rate by the most since 2020. The move came shortly before a batch of disappointing data, including retail sales. Donald Trump and some of his top administration officials are indicted in the state of Georgia over efforts to overturn the 2020 presidential election. It's the fourth criminal case against Trump as he campaigns to return to the White House. And UK wage growth actually accelerates to the strongest pace on record, lifting the pound and adding to inflationary concerns. So we have a great lineup of exclusive interviews coming up. But first thing is first, let's check on the European market map. But as you know, a lot of this, what's happening in Europe, will be dictated by not only the Fed, but of course by the Bank of England. We're seeing a little bit of downward pressure. It's also the August 15th, which means that a lot of places in Europe on our holiday. In Italy, it's Ferragosto. Happy Ferragosto to those that celebrate. The DAX down 0.7%. Now, as we were saying, UK wage growth actually accelerated more than expected. In fact, it's the strongest pace on record. Now, what this means is that it really underscores the Bank of England's concern that it hasn't broken this wage price spiral feeding inflation across the economy. This is the picture for the moment for sterling. If we see what it's doing today, of course, the Bank of England worrying that soaring pay is pushing up prices across the economy. And in terms of the pound extending gains after the release, as again, traders are now trying to weigh out whether the BOE needs to do a lot more. Look, Japan's currency intervention also dropped toward a level that triggered the first yen buying intervention since 1999 in September, currently 145.86. So we're still on yen watch. The comments from the finance minister caused the yen to rise a bit. The currency overall has depreciated some 3% since the Bank of Japan decided to tolerate a higher benchmark bond yield. That was around June 28th. So you see the move there from that moment. 145.86 is where we're now. And then the third story on the currency markets, but overall it's really this China data that's weaker than expected, which prompted policymakers to do a little bit more. Now, we have some strategists, including our Mark Cranfield, saying that the yuan has now become collateral damage in China's quest to improve sentiment towards its asset markets. So we're seeing some of the daily reference rates versus the estimates. We also look at the Chinese government bond yield dropping to a 3-year low. And of course, if you look at what investors are now trying to figure out, it feels like every emerging market's currency, or certainly policymakers, is out for itself. Now, China's central bank has unexpectedly, as we were just saying, impact on yuan, cut a key interest rate by the most since 2020 in a move aimed at bolstering the country's faltering recovery. Now, this came shortly before the release of disappointing economic activity data for July that missed estimates. Joining us now is Beata Manthe, head of European equity strategy at Citigroup Global Markets. Beata, great to see you today. There's quite a lot going on in currency markets in China. I mean, what do you make of what PBOC did? They're trying hard. The market kind of took it the other way, and I don't know what we're pricing in right now.
So I think in terms of China, it was always our view that the bad economic news out of there means we are going to get some stimulus. This is part of it, monetary easing, but we think more is to come. And of course, that's a very important part of how the markets are going to go forward from here.
Yeah, and this, of course, changes everything from the Fed to the ECB and the Bank of England. I know you specialize in European equities, but how vulnerable are they from some of what we're hearing from China? Are we importing deflationary pressures?
There will be a bit of that, right? But it's a small part of importing deflation versus the inflationary or wage pressures that you've seen today out of the local economy. So it's all a balancing act. But bottom line, we think, that's the bad news, that the tightening cycle from the major central banks is not over yet. And there is a good side of the tightening cycle not being over. That means that the economy is relatively more stronger, but that also means that rates will stay high for longer and it will have implications.
So what's your biggest concern right now in the global economy? Is that we're underestimating a slowdown in China, or is that we're underestimating, for example, the strength in the U.S. economy just because of the tight labor force?
So if we are underestimating the strength of the US economy, so the soft landing scenarios, I think it's a good news in the first place for the markets, especially for the cyclical parts of the global markets, where Europe or emerging markets are the biggest part of it, right? This is why very recently we've upgraded European equities and emerging markets equities to overweight. We've downgraded the US to neutral on the basis of the soft landing scenarios. But as I said, and that's the view of our US economists, that the strength of the economy, perhaps short-term good news for the markets, but eventually that means central banks will stay high for longer, and eventually it's going to cause a recession. But we might be still some way from that.
So, but if we do have some kind of recession, would it cause a crash in markets, or are we far off that?
Again, depends which markets we are talking about. So within the equities, our model suggests that actually the more cyclical, which makes sense, more cyclical markets like Europe, for example, they have already priced in some EPS contraction, which actually might not happen, right? So they've priced in too much of the bad news. And if we have soft landing ahead of us, we know it's not going to last forever, but we don't know what's going to happen in a year or two. So let's concentrate over the next few quarters. I think there is a more of a catch-up on the soft landing rhetoric for EM or for Europe than for the US, which is mostly pricing this soft landing in already.
But what do you do with the UK? So we had, the highest wage wage increases on record. I mean, this doesn't make it easy for the Bank of England.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. But the UK equity market, and I'm talking FTSE 100 here, it's an interesting market. It's driven by very different forces than most of the markets worldwide. So it's very international. So actually, the direction of the pound matters a lot. So strength in pound is not necessarily good. The direction actually of the oil prices matters more for EPS in the UK than what the local economy is doing.
So are you expecting more interest rate hikes that are not?
Yes.
Are they priced in already into the markets?
So, well, you've seen the price action today. Yeah. They weren't completely. There was a bit of repricing, right? But our view, the view of our UK economists, is that yes, we are going to have another hike, and then cuts early next year.
All right, Beata, thank you so much. As always, Beata Manthi, their head of European equity strategy at Citigroup Global Markets, stays with us, and we'll have plenty more from Beata throughout the program. Now, coming up, U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen also sees a path to easing inflation and keeping a healthy job market. We discuss that next, and this is Bloomberg.
The administration remains committed to taking actions to lower prices for Americans where we can. And we continue to monitor developments, particularly those abroad, that may affect prices and growth.
U.S. Treasury Secretary there, Janet Yellen, on the path to easing inflation. Now let's bring back Beata Manthi, head of European equity strategy at Citigroup Global Markets. Beata, when you look at the trajectory for the U.S., and this is something that we touched on, are there data points that you think could show that inflation is coming down, but then actually creep back up until, towards the end of the year?
I think it's more complicated than that, than just looking at one indicator. But wage growth, definitely something to look out for. Property prices, something to watch. Energy prices, of course, coming back in force. We don't think it's big enough yet to swing inflation. But any signs that inflation can come back, and the strength of the economy being the very single indicator we have to look at, that means that we could have inflation creeping back up in a few months later next year, and the Fed has to come back.
But what does a policy mistake look like now? And I know that the Fed, but also the ECB and other central banks are at pains in saying, look, we could stay here at this level, but stay there for longer.
Yes.
And I don't know why they put so much emphasis on this. Does that change consumer behavior or refinancing behavior?
So the longer it stays high, the more side effects you will have and casualties, right? But the fact that the economy is strong is definitely a good thing. But in terms of the equity market, the way we look at it, we look at refinancing needs from individual companies, right? Lots of large cap companies have benefited from refinancing long term with very low interest rates a year or over a year ago. So in the near term, for large caps, it's not a big problem. We find that it could be a bigger problem for smaller enterprises and also for SMEs, for the economy, so non-listed enterprises.
So what does it mean for, I know you have a quite contrarian view, that you really like European equities. Is that over US equities?
Yes, so what we've done, it's really recent change, recent upgrade from July. We've swapped what we've done post the banking crisis in March in the US. So back then we've upgraded the US, downgraded Europe. It was a bit of a contrarian call because the problems were in the US back then, but we thought, the rates-driven market that we've seen last year is the end of it. Really, the market is going to be more focused on fundamentals. We'll want quality, and of course, the US, from the weights perspective, it's the #1 market that has the most of it, and it outperformed. Now, as the inflation is rolling over and the soft landing scenarios are looking more plausible, we are not out of the woods. It's not necessarily going to happen. If we knew it was going to happen, the market would be up all the time, right? And especially Europe and the US. So the market is still considering whether it's plausible or not. But I think if there is more evidence for that, cyclicality, like European cyclicality, emerging market cyclicality, is going to take over.
So Beata, are there sectors actually that look attractive but expensive in Europe? Because
Yes.
I guess the overall thinking about Europe is that it should be cheaper than the US.
Absolutely. So actually the European market is trading at the biggest discount to the US in historical terms. Almost 40% discount. It's huge. An average historical discount is 20%. So Europe is always, has been always, or most of the time, cheaper than the US. There are particular parts of the market, the cheap cyclicals that have been derated the most, that are trading at the biggest discount. So what we've recently done in our sector allocation, both in Europe and globally, we've upgraded metals and mining and materials globally, metals and mining in Europe, to overweight. Part of the story is it's pricing in a huge amount of bad news, 60% of EPS contraction in the price. And if there is more stimulus out of China, the sector is going to definitely be #1 beneficiar of that.
All right, Beata, thank you so much. Beata Manthi, their head of European equity strategy at Citi Global Markets, stays with us. In the meantime, the MTN Group, Africa's biggest wireless firm, is also trading lower this morning after jumping as much as 10% in yesterday's session. Now, that's after MasterCard actually agreed to take a minority stake in the South African company's fintech unit. Well, joining us now is Ralph Mupita, the Chief Executive Officer of MTN. So thank you for joining us, Mr. Mupita. First of all, why did you decide for this transaction, selling a stake in your fintech unit?
Yeah, thanks for having us on the show. I mean, I think there are two aspects to the strategic partnership that we're looking to build with MasterCard. The first is we have signed definitive agreements on a commercial set of agreements to accelerate payments and remittances across Africa. So we are working with them in terms of issuance, acceptance, and remittance on a multi-year basis across many of the markets that we operate. We're operating in 16 markets offering financial services solutions. So that's, those agreements have been signed. The other is we announced an MOU for a transaction where they would be to take a minority stake. And, the closing conditions of those are still outstanding, but we valued the business, working with them at $5.2 billion.
Yeah, Mr. Mupita, first of all, how much of the business are you actually willing to sell? And does the agreement come with a capital injection?
Yeah, look, I mean, we've said that we are open to selling up to a maximum of 30% of the fintech business. We're not anticipating only one potential strategic partner will be within that 30%. So I think you need to read that there might be, 3, maybe even 4 strategic partners within that. So we haven't disclosed the absolute amount that, MasterCard have been discussing with us. But, once we've concluded the the transaction, that will all be made public.
So, but give me a sense of how much, is there a minimum that you want to sell or a maximum that you don't want to sell? Do you have an idea of that?
Yeah, look, I mean, I know that you want some more precision. I mean, all we've simply said is up to 30%, but, obviously a strategic stake, will be something that, one wouldn't see, much smaller than, 4 or 5%. I think that's the minimum we'd like to for any strategic partner coming in. But, the very specific terms around that transaction will only be communicated at closing.
Give me a sense of why, the timing of this is so important. So why bring a partner now?
Yeah, for us, we're trying to grow what we call advanced services. So this is basically bank tech products, payments and e-commerce, as well as remittance. We built a business now with 60 million subscribers across Africa, making us, as a single entity, the largest mobile money business or fintech unit on the African continent. And we've been providing very basic services, cash in, cash out type services. But as more and more of the consumers on the African continent are getting more sophisticated in their financial services needs, we are moving into these areas of remittance, payments, and bank tech. And, we're looking at partnerships to help us accelerate, and the MasterCard partnerships on the commercial side, for remittance and payments is right there.
Is that why Africa seems like such fertile ground for a lot of fintechs? It seems like a lot of the innovation is coming from that continent right now.
No, absolutely. I mean, Africa's, close on to, 1.4 billion people. The bulk of the, people on the African continent have never experienced traditional banking services. And with mobile money and fintech services, you're able to leapfrog people from, not having any financial services to using the phone to provide a lot of financial services, to, everyday Africans out there in countries like Nigeria, Ghana, Uganda, Rwanda. These are the markets that we operate in. So, mobile money has grown, fastest on the African continent across, all emerging markets. So the continent is ripe for growth for fintech services.
The economy is not easy in South Africa and other parts, of course, of Africa because of inflation, because of some of the debt and some of the world concerns that we have on the global economy. How does it feel being the chief executive of MTN in this environment?
Yeah, it's quite challenging. The operating conditions, geopolitically, regulatory, and economically have been quite challenging. Several of the markets we're operating in, have gone to the IMF for, structural support programs. And so, foreign currency has been quite challenging the last 6 months to be able to secure that in many of the operations, the countries that we operate in. But, we're providing a service that is much needed by consumers and businesses, which is connectivity. And we've seen that continue to grow very strongly in pretty much all our markets. And then also on the fintech side, transaction volumes there have grown like 37%. Transaction value on our fintech platform has grown by 67%. So these are kind of structural demands for services that we are able to offer. But the operating context and environment has been challenging. But it's been challenging, to operate, in this poly-crisis world, pretty much for every business.
Thank you so much for joining us. MTN Group Chief Executive Ralph Mupita there, and congratulations once again on the deal. Now, coming up, former President Donald Trump has been indicted in Atlanta for trying to undo his defeat in the 2020 election in Georgia. So what happens next? We get the details for you a little bit later in the program. This is Bloomberg. The conversations that matter, the insights you need. This is The Pulse. I'm Francine Lacqua here in London. Now let's bring back Citigroup's Beata Manthe. Beata, thank you so much for sticking around. Now, we talked a little bit about you liking European equities over U.S. equities. Is there anything else that you're overweight globally?
So emerging markets is another one, and in terms of the sectors, just coming back to this embracing soft landing, if you believe in it, you need to dial up cyclicality. So in our global sector allocation, we still have some quality tilt via communication services, and we kept healthcare as an overweight because we thought in the near term we will be still battling quite a lot of bad news, so it could be helpful to have some defensiveness or quality. But then on the other hand, on selective cyclicality, we are overweight industrials and we are overweight metals and mining materials, and really both of them should benefit from the second leg of China reopening in our view.
Very quickly, is there something that you do with tech right now, or does it just look too expensive?
So we have been overweight tech all the way until July globally and in Europe. But what we've done recently, we've taken profits basically. It's run a good way. It had a good run. It's a neutral now, but we don't think its outperformance is over. We would be buying into any dips or profit taking there. So we are having a little bit of that in the markets now.
Okay, Beata, as always, thank you so much for joining us. Beata Manthi there from Citigroup. Now, coming up, we take a look in sustainability. In luxury fashion, we're joined by designer Anya Hindmarch for an exclusive conversation. That's coming up next, and this is Bloomberg. Now, China's central bank unexpectedly cutting a key rate by the most since 2020. The move came shortly before a batch of disappointing data, including retail sales. Donald Trump and some of his top administration officials are indicted in the state of Georgia over efforts to overturn the 2020 presidential election. It's the fourth criminal case against Trump as he campaigns to return to the White House. And UK wage growth accelerates to the strongest pace on record, lifting the pound and adding to inflationary concerns. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to The Pulse. I'm Francine Lacqua here in London. Now, fashion designer Anya Hindmarch has become known for her stance on sustainability, incorporating green choices into luxury design. Her work to eliminate the use of single-use plastic include the Universal Bag Project, which is a collaboration with supermarkets to create reusable and recyclable tote bags. Now, to date, the project has diverted over 150 tons of virgin plastic from landfill and has recently announced its latest partnership with supermarkets Tesco and Morrisons. So we're delighted to be joined by Anya Hindmarch. Thank you and welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations. This is what your fourth or fifth bag that you're doing in collaboration with some of these big supermarkets so that it can be reused and used over again and we don't use the plastic bags.
Absolutely. No, it's really exciting to be launched already with Tesco's and soon mid-September with Morrisons and many more supermarket discussions underway. So it's a really good project and an exciting project.
So how do these come about? Because you make a real difference, right? If you use one bag for 10 years instead of getting the plastic bags, even if you buy 5, 10p, it makes a meaningful difference. And I know it's been like a couple of years since you also had that, storefront with all the plastic bottles that we've used. Do you also lobby government? Do you see the industry changing towards that a little bit?
I think I don't lobby. I think sometimes just action and actually sort of inspiring people to behave differently is almost more effective. And I think that actually if you make something desirable, it's the best way to make people change their behaviour. I mean, obviously, the very best thing of all is not to keep using another bag and just use the same bag we've had for years. But actually, supermarkets who actually, Tesco's and Morrisons, case in point, are doing a huge amount to actually reduce plastic in their organisations. But that's originally where a lot of the plastic and single-use plastic was it was the kind of coalface of the problem, if you like. So it's really exciting to work with the supermarkets and to work with so many of them, and there are many more in the pipeline. And we talk a lot about sort of actually eco, not ego. So collaborating and being very open source about actually how we do this project is really an important part of the project as well.
What's next?
Well, we're just launching in Hong Kong, just launching in Japan, and many more sort of stores that are actually in discussion. So we're really hoping we can make a difference, not only in terms of saving plastic from landfill, but keeping that conversation really live. It's such an easy, quick win, frankly.
And do you see a difference between some of the conversations that you're having around sustainability and the reuse of plastic in the UK compared to certain parts of Asia or the US?
I don't, actually. I think everyone still sees it sort of front of mind, and it's important and really easy, quick thing to do. So we're not. I think the only difference perhaps with the consumer is actually with cost of living. Inevitably, the kind of climate concerns slip down the agenda just through need, really. And that's really worrying, and that's always the issue when, you know, economically things are not so sort of sound, because often it kind of can cost more, or it's a change of behaviour that perhaps is a bit more of an effort. So, but the nice thing, people do care, and I think you only see the weather changes that are happening everywhere, which are frankly terrifying, and that in many ways is the best sort of PR for the problem and for change.
I mean, when you hire, how much is inflation a concern, and how much can you hire because I guess the people that you're hiring of maybe a younger age really want to be part of a company that's trying to do its bit against climate change?
Yeah, I think that it makes a difference. I mean, your values are important, and I think absolutely the younger generation, they see it as front of mind, which is great. But yes, inflation generally is quite a challenge in every respect to the business, frankly. And it's interesting, every single conversation with every part of the supply chain is challenged right now, and trying not to push that onto the end user is really complex. And we really sat down for so much time working with our suppliers for them to absorb a third and us to absorb a third, and perhaps only push a third onto the consumer where possible. So it's really challenging, but we cannot step away from the fact that we have some, you know, the most important thing is the health of our planet. I mean, actually, when you think about the migrant boats right now, you think about the potential for climate refugees, and I mean, this is just the tip of the iceberg. So it's a really serious matter which we all need to do our very best for.
And Anya, you sell globally, not only in the UK. What's the business environment in the UK compared to the rest of the world?
Well, it's interesting. I've just back from Asia, actually, and it was really, I was in Tokyo and I was in Hong Kong, and it was really bubbly there. I think, you know, Hong Kong and China was just coming out of this long period of being closed, so it was very exciting to sort of see the energy. And Japan was just 7 deep at every shop front. It was unbelievable. So that was exciting. The UK's okay. I mean, I think there's various bits and pieces we need. You know, but I think it's all right. It's sort of steady Eddie, and I think it's important that actually we kind of think about the positives, because it's such a great place to be and to do business. And I think everyone's a bit sort of down at the moment. And actually, when you sort of step back and think about the climate here, it's pretty great. So I'm very pro actually being based here and doing business out of the UK.
So the positives, what, innovation? I guess that's a thirst for life.
I mean, listen, our legal practice, our language, our proximity, you know, we're incredibly well placed geographically. I mean, it's just a creative place, it's an open place. I think that, you know, we can do things quite quickly here. So, you know, from a supply chain point of view, you're very sort of central. So it's just a brilliant place. And I think it feels like quite a safe place to be as well. Actually, I felt recently travelling in some parts of the world, I've not felt quite so safe as I was before. So it's still an amazing place, and I think we need to actually be a little bit more positive about the pros.
The negatives, I guess it's lobbying for VAT cuts.
Yes, there's all those things which are important. Obviously, tourism here is key, and you know, I think it's important that we try and look at every which way we can, you know, work to attract visitors to come here and spend in the UK. So that's an important pact. But no, I think there's lots of really good things actually, and so I'm very pro being based in the UK for business.
Yeah, and I love that, because actually you're a proud Brit. Yeah. And do you feel like the headlines are a little bit too negative in retail in general?
I think so. And funny enough, there's some more positives reading the headlines this morning. Definitely some positive sort of green shoots coming. Yeah. I think we'll get on top of these immediate problems. I think inevitably with inflation that will ease, and that will make such a difference. It's the single most important thing right now, I think. And so we need to make sure we're driving business. That's key. And I think we need to make sure that we're keeping the climate issues really front and centre. That's really key for me.
Anya, apart from the universal bag, which are these bags that I think you how much do they cost? £5 or 10?
So we sell them for £10.
£10.
And it's an exciting project that, as you said, is really saving plastic from landfill, but also hopefully inspiring people to think about reuse. Yeah. Unfortunately, I think the stats are something like people take a bag for life every 2 weeks. So that's not working. So it's how can we actually inspire people to have something they love using, but has a very interesting, very simple sort of returns mechanism, which means it's recycled locally. So you literally fold the bag into its pocket and put it in any post box in the UK, and we guarantee to recycle it locally. So it's it's very much a first. It's also guaranteed to last 10 years. So there's lots of firsts, but it's an iterative process, and we will keep improving it as we have new ideas and new learnings and technologies.
But you also invented you know, I'm a plastic bag, which is something that you sell in your shops. If you look at the amount of things that you sell, how much percentage-wise is green or recycled, and how much will that increase in the next 4 to 5 years?
Well, I've never done the numbers, but we try wherever we can. Well, first of all, we always say we're not perfect, and I say that loud and proud because it's very important that people just do what they can and get going rather than be so scared of being criticised. So there's, we're not perfect, but wherever we can, we just keep improving. So packaging, or the way we move things around, materials we use, recycle wherever possible, and actually having worked on a bag that we designed from scratch, 2 years of R&D that could never end up in landfill, which is another really important way of thinking. So of course we must keep in circulation the 8 billion tons of plastic that are on the planet right now, I understand the number to be, and really keep that in circulation and use that. But also, could we start to design things that actually could never end up in landfill? And that's an interesting and important challenge.
And this is R&D that you did internally. Is technology actually catching up? Are you able to recycle easier and for cheaper prices?
There's lots of things happening all the time, and recycling is quite complex, quite expensive. Sometimes can be even polluting. So there's lots of things we're learning all the time. And I think the R&D that we're using in this compostable and biodegradable bag as well is really accelerating. And there's investment into these areas, which is really exciting. I think a lot of the renewable and green investment, impact investing is really helping. So we're getting a lot of people approaching us saying, can we help to fund the R&D? Because it's a hugely expensive thing for a company such as mine, which is not that huge. And so that's a real help as well. So, for example, most leather is coated in virgin plastic. That's why it doesn't sort of damage in the rain. But actually, we've used a liquid silk. There's an amazing company from the States called activated silk, and so all that sort of technology and development is really valued and important. So it's an exciting moment.
Anya, so we love the book. You also came on Leaders, and I still get messages from people saying, what would be Anya's advice in these kind of, you're an entrepreneur, you're figuring out cost of living crisis, there's also huge inflation, and I know you mentor a lot of some of the younger kind of nascent designers. What's your one word of advice right now to them?
Just be brave, just do it. And I think just keep trying it. Failure is part of the process. And I think we need people to be, there was a lovely movement when I started my business in sort of the Thatcher years of get out there and start a business. And I think we need to start that momentum again.
Have we lost it, or is it just dormant a little bit?
I think there's COVID, there's so much that's happened that actually, I think also once you see, when I started my business, there were so many businesses starting. And if you see friends doing it, you think, I could as well. So I think we need to really foster that sort of energy and get that momentum going again.
You also have a brilliant ice cream shop, and it's rather unusual because you have like frozen peas. Do you have Marmite or ketchup?
Branston pickle we have.
Branston pickle. What's your favorite?
Well, they're all made in this beautiful small batch ice cream maker in Devon, and they're unusual flavours, all really delicious. And we've had queues. For literally 300 people every day from 9 o'clock in the morning. It's been absolutely ridiculous. But again, creativity brings fun. It brings engagement, it brings customers, and it brings people to the UK. So I think it's very important to keep that front and centre in business.
Where do you find your creativity?
I don't know.
Branston pickle.
Sometimes a glass of wine. Who knows? No, I think that I love creativity, and I think it's important to feed. We're so lucky in the UK. We have, the Tate and all these amazing organisations and museums that we can go into for free. It's incredible what we have here. And so actually that stimulates me. That's where I go and feed my brain, and those ideas bank and spit out in some weird flavour of ice cream. Who knows?
I love that. I think there's also molten salt, which we all need to try.
Delicious, that one.
Anya, thank you so much, as always, for coming on. Anya Hindmarch, they're, of course, a fashion designer, also very involved in sustainability. Coming up, the former president, Donald Trump, is indicted in Atlanta over his efforts to undo his defeat in the 2020 election in Georgia. We get the details next, and this is Bloomberg. The conversations that matter, the insights you need. This is The Pulse. I'm Francine Lacqua here in London. Now, Donald Trump has been indicted in Atlanta over alleged efforts to undo his 2020 election defeat. Now, it adds another criminal case against the former president as he campaigns for the White House, while Trump's lawyers call the indictment flawed and unconstitutional. The other story we're looking at is, of course, what's happening in global markets. Part of this is this UK record wage growth, keeping the Bank of England on a hike path. Now, average pay, listen to this, average pay excluding bonuses are rising some 7.8% in the UK in the 3 months through to June compared with a year ago. I don't know if we have a sterling chart, but certainly it's worth just a mention looking at some of these record wage growth and what that means for worries of the Bank of England. We're jumping around a bit from Trump to Bank of England to back to Trump. Let's get a full lowdown of what exactly is expected and why this indictment of President Trump feels different from the others. We're joined now by Bruce Einhorn. Bruce, when you look at this indictment, how different is it?
Well, it's different in several ways. So compare it to the recent indictment that we had from Special Counsel Jack Smith, who indicted former President Trump alone. He did mention there were other co-conspirators who weren't indicted. In this case, from District Attorney Fani Willis in Fulton County, Georgia, the former president and 18 other people were indicted. Those included former New York City Mayor Rudolph Giuliani, the former president's lawyer, as well as several other lawyers, and also Mark Meadows, who was his chief of staff. Mark Meadows, this is the first time he's been indicted in any of these cases. It's a pretty broad indictment covering lots of different areas. All told, there are 41 counts, including racketeering, false statements, conspiracy to commit forgery, to file false documents, to commit election fraud, to commit computer theft, perjury. The racketeering charge alone, that count includes 161 different acts alleging the various crimes as part of that racketeering count. Just to give you a sense of how serious this potential case is, this potential conviction would be for the former president, racketeering alone has in Georgia a minimum prison term of 5 years. It could go up to 20 years. Another big difference between this case and, say, the earlier case involving Jack Smith and the Department of Justice is that even if Donald Trump were to win re-election, or if another Republican were to win the presidency and pardon him, if he were to win and pardon himself, that wouldn't do anything for the Georgia case. It would not make the Georgia case go away. Right. The president does not have the ability to pardon in a state case.
So Bruce, how soon will the trial actually begin?
That is a good question. It is unclear at the moment. The district attorney, Fani Willis, has said that she expects all the people indicted to surrender by August 25th, the end of next week. She said that she intends to try them all together, that she intends to ask the judge for a trial within 6 months. Whether she'll get that wish really depends on the judge. We don't know who the judge will be. The former president does have a very busy legal calendar ahead with several civil cases as well as now 4 criminal cases. And he'll be fighting all those at the same time that he is contending in the Republican presidential primary. And if he wins that, and he is currently the front runner, then would be facing a general election campaign with several of these cases either ongoing or pending.
Thank you so much, Bruce Einhorn, there with the very latest on President Trump. Now, Taiwan's vice president is seeking to reassure voters that he's a steady pair of hands as he campaigns to become the island's next leader. Well, he spoke exclusively to Joe Weber of Bloomberg Businessweek in his first interview with international media since becoming vice president, and he told us about his plans for relations with mainland China.
我们必须要根据事实，就是说。
We must abide by the truth, which is what I mean by pragmatism. It is that Taiwan is already a sovereign, independent country called the Republic of China. It's not part of the People's Republic of China. The ROC and PRC are not subordinate to one another. It is not necessary to declare independence.
What
is your roadmap to formal independence?
因为我的责任就是 维持台海的现状。
My responsibility is to maintain the status quo in the Taiwan Strait while protecting Taiwan and maintaining democracy, peace and prosperity. So no such framework exists. We must work to maintain the peaceful status quo because Taiwan is already a sovereign country.
How confident are you that the U.S. will have Taiwan's back should the situation with China escalate?
美国是台湾的好朋友。
The US is a close friend of Taiwan. We are partners in a number of areas, from politics, the economy, human rights, to our society.
因为台湾的安全问题
Because Taiwan's security challenges are a global concern, the upkeep of peace and stability in both the Taiwan Strait and the Indo-Pacific region fulfills the common interests of the international community. I believe that all democracies in the world, including the US, would be aware of how to respond if such a scenario were to take place.
What do you want the world to know about you as a person?
我是一个理性
I am a rational and steady leader. I know how we can respond to the challenges we face as a country. I also understand that the serious and complex nature of issues in the Taiwan Strait call for rational and steady leadership. This will enable our country to move forward amid changing geopolitical circumstances.
往前继续走。
Well, that was the Taiwanese vice president speaking exclusively to Bloomberg Businessweek's Joel Weber. Now, also, this is our big number. We do this every day. We quite like bringing you a pretty exciting number. 90% of the world's most advanced chips are made in Taiwan. So our big number today is 90. Coming up, good news, bad news. Well, UK wage growth accelerated to a record in the second quarter, adding pressure as the BOE attempts to bring inflation down. We discuss that next, and this is Bloomberg. The conversations that matter, the insights you need. This is The Pulse. I'm Francine Lacqua here in London. Now, here in the UK, wage growth accelerated to the strongest pace on record in the latest quarter. That is, of course, adding to concerns that a tight labour market is feeding inflationary pressures. So we're joined by John Stepek, the author of Money Distilled and also a great podcast. John, when you're at the Bank of England now, you wake up, Andrew Bailey looks at the headline inflation or the wage growth numbers, and he thinks, am I going to have to tighten more?
Yeah, I mean, it's embarrassing for the Bank of England, given that, one of the things they've consistently emphasised is that wage pressures are too high for their liking. I mean, I don't think it necessarily means that we'll definitely see a bigger hike in rates than's already expected, and obviously the market's kind of pricing in a bit more, but that's what markets do. We've still got inflation tomorrow, so things could change quickly based on what happens there. And before the next rate meeting, we also have another employment report and another inflation report. So I think it's just worth kind of like holding on and seeing what those bring. Because there were a few signs of kind of moderate weakness alongside the kind of wage growth. Vacancies fell again. And there's signs there might be a bit more slack in the system.
But does it change? So markets are now pricing in, the interest rates at 6%. Does that feel too high?
I mean, it sort of depends on what happens in terms of rates. But I think one thing to think about, though, is that I think the idea of a wage price spiral is wrong. Okay. We've got prices have gone up, so people need higher wages to cope, and that's one reason we haven't had a recession. So I think actually real wages rising is a good thing, and it is worth remembering that real wages are still, we've only just broken to the point where wages are actually flat against inflation. People haven't had a proper pay rise for a very long time, so overall this is positive.
Okay, overall this is positive is my main takeaway. If John Stepek says it, then you better believe it. Thank you so much, John, as always. Up next, the Bloomberg Surveillance Early Edition with Kritik Gupta in New York, Guy Johnson here in London, and this is Bloomberg.